Okay, and we're live. Welcome, everybody, to Live Real Talk with Nina. And a big welcome to my guest today, Tiffany Neuman. And welcome to the show, all of those who are listening, as well as Tiffany. Um, Tiffany and I go quite a while back. We met through a mutual Swiss friend, actually. And I have worked with Tiffany, but we'll get to that in a hot second. Tiffany, please introduce yourself so our audience knows who they're listening to.
Yeah, absolutely. So, hello, everybody. My name is Tiffany Neuman. I am a legacy brand strategist. So, we can get more into that as well later, what that actually means. But I've been a brand strategist for about 20 years now. So, I worked in the corporate world with brands like Stoli Vodka, Burt's Bees, FedEx, Adidas. And Fortune 500 companies as a creative director. And so I've always kind of lived, breathed, the brand and design and strategy. And so I left about 4 years ago after my daughter was starting to grow up and decided to begin my own business. So now I work specifically with online entrepreneurs and help them create their legacy brands.
And you do work with some pretty big names too, right, in the online world. Who have you worked with that we might recognize?
Yeah, some of the people you might recognize would be Selena Sue, Liz Hartkey, Ron Reich. It's been really an honor and pleasure to work with, multi-seven-figure business owners as well as people all the way down to, the first year or two in their business and people that are definitely experts and established, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be that super high level either.
Yeah, yeah. So when Silke introduced the two of us, my pain point had been that I had been in business at that point about 23 years. Still had, I mean, I never even had proper branding. I kind of was stuck in the I have a logo, I have a font, and I have some colors. And I didn't even have a style guide or anything. And so when and I knew I needed a new website. That was really the pain point that
The
I knew.
driver.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the driver was I like my website was horrid, and I basically designed it myself, and that's what it looked like. So I met you, and I just immediately was drawn to the idea of creating something beyond just a new logo and a new website, but actually laying a foundation to
Mm.
go forward, right? So tell me, talk a little bit about the program that I was in, because I just and the philosophy. I think the philosophy really is what around it that I'm
Sure.
interested in talking
Looking
about.
for. Yeah. And that's where I found is there's usually, three types of people. So you were kind of in the camp of not being aligned with your brand anymore or never really, you were successful without it, but it can always,
Mhm.
it always helps to up level your brand,
Mhm.
obviously. And so
Yeah.
that's a lot of people I work with. Also, a lot of people are pivoting and shifting, especially these last 2 years I've found. So my philosophy, which is the legacy brand method, which I've trademarked, is really helping people to look at their vision. So 3, 5 years out down the road. Some people can go as far as 10 years. A lot of people say, I can't even think that
Yeah.
far out. But in the future, where do you really want your business to be? And then we reverse engineer it and create the brand for where you want to be so you can grow and evolve into it.
Yeah.
And that keeps it from you having to like kind of update the brand every couple of years or never investing in a brand because you're like, well, I don't know, like I have all these plans and I don't want to keep changing it.
Mhm.
So that's really the point of that. And then the legacy piece is really having a brand that stands the test of time, that is leaving something behind. As business owners, you've been, especially had your business for quite a long time, and that's something that you could either sell in the future or you want to leave behind your mark. And so having that brand that is a legacy. And we also look back to corporations. So, Levi's jeans is a great example.
Mhm.
They've been around since the 1800s. They've been around a very long time. And,
Yeah.
they have shifted and changed a little bit over the course of time. But if you look, their brand foundation it has always been consistent. And that's really the thing that I've seen with a lot of entrepreneurs is they tend to not be consistent or just not even know what their brand really is to solidify it. And then the people that they really look up to, they're like, well, why is their business so successful? And it's usually because they've invested in their brand foundation. And so the analogy I like to use is, you know, what people normally think of the brand, like you said, the logo, the colors, the fonts, that's the tip of the iceberg. That's above the surface. That's what we see. Yeah. But really, all of the work happens underneath the surface. It's that big foundational piece of the iceberg that's the most important. And then rather than putting lipstick on the pig, we're, you know, the visual piece of the brand really becomes the icing on the cake because you get so much clarity in that foundation.
Yeah. And, you know, I think you bring up something really important that I talk to my clients about too all the time as well, especially as, you know, small business entrepreneurs, especially as service-based business, which is the ones that I service. You are the product, right? You as the owner and the person who's delivering the service. And so you must be aligned, because I always say, like, if you're not yourself when you create video, it's not sustainable.
Yeah.
And
So
if you
true.
yeah, and if you're yourself, then you know, then you're rooting it in something that will never change, right? You might evolve, but in the end, you are you, right? So and that's what I found so valuable in working with you, is to sort of find that, like, you know, I think it's a little bit, I mean, you go so much beyond just branding. I mean, I remember these exercises about, you know, where do I want to be, what are my values, all that kind of stuff, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, really digging deep into that. So I really like to look at it as a personal development, like a transformational process. Rather than, you know, what is my brand? How should I think a lot of times too, we think about how we're positioning towards our ideal clients, which is really important because we want to bring those people in. But rather than how to position and how to speak to them and like convince them to work with us, like you said, if you can actually get to the root and the essence of who you are and put that out there, like attracts like we're energetic people. And so when you put that authentic energy out, then that's more, and obviously there still needs to be some strategy, but putting that out will attract aligned clients. And so that's a really big benefit too, is to see, like, I get a lot of people who are like, well, I'm getting clients, but they're not the right clients. It's not really the people that I want to work with, you know, like they're whatever. And so that's the other piece of it too, is really getting to that essence so you can attract people that you love working with. Like we always talk about, who are the top 3 clients that you've worked with? What did you love about them? Okay, how can we attract more of those people?
Yeah, and that's a really important question to ask. And I also think that, you know, the people I work with are often also mirror image of who I am, right? Because you're attracted into what you see. And, you know, yes, mostly women, but also, you know, I mean, I'll work with men as well, but mostly women. And I just find, and when I met, you know, with you, you know, my website was scrappy. I was still trying to kind of figure out how to make this online thing work for us. And that's the kind of people I attracted, right? And those were people who were fascinating to work with, and I liked them, but they didn't have a purse. So, you know, I needed to upgrade to a point where I knew that if I offered a $3,000 course, my clients were, you know, I don't want to take their lost money either. I want to feel good about, you know, what I can offer for what they pay me. And it should be in a world where, yeah, they're making an investment, but they're also, you know, not eating for 5 weeks after that payment.
Right. And they see the innate value in it and all of those things. Right.
Exactly. And so that's where I needed to kind of, you know, I had upgraded the way, because, you know, the world before for me was all about, you know, doing these big productions. I basically didn't even need a website, right? It was all word of mouth.
Yeah. And you're in New York, you had the connections. Yeah.
Exactly. I had the Rolodex, which I physically used to have a Rolodex in the heyday. But you know, and now as I, you know, we evolved as Clockwise, we needed to have a website, and not just a website, the whole, like, you know, branding. How do we show up on LinkedIn? How do we speak to our clients? All of that stuff. So how do you do that in a course? I mean, how do you? I know you have some special tricks up your sleeve. But I mean, I would imagine a lot of people are like, well, this is deep, deep philosophy of who I am and where I want to be in 3 or 5 years. How do you get them off the, I don't know, ledge into the I'm making some choices now area?
Yeah, that's a great question. So basically, to be a completely transparent, it was trial and error first because I had also been used to working in corporate. So now I've done, 10 rounds of my cohort, and it's very like the results are there. The very first one I ran as a beta, and I just said, okay, like I know my stuff, I am an expert, but this is slightly different. And so it was a little bit of trial and error, like how we pull this out. And so what I found is the method that I created is really, like you said, the mirror. I think that's the main thing, is like really pulling, I ask very pointed questions, have them journal, have them sit with it. Then we have weekly calls. And I think that's what's different too, is most branding processes, it's like you fill out a questionnaire, and then you're like, okay, this is your logo, these are your colors. You don't necessarily go this deep. And so having it in a group, in the corporate world, the businesses would spend millions of dollars on market research. And that's something that most entrepreneurs aren't doing, is saying they're thinking in their head, what do these people want to hear? So the group format's really cool because you're in a room with other entrepreneurs, and they oftentimes are your ideal clients, and or they understand the entrepreneurial world. And so when they're talking about their language and what they're doing and what resonates, you'll have not only my expertise, but other people coming and being like, oh my gosh, if you said it like that, I would sign up right now. And so the difference between having them like really journal and pull that out, and then being in the group and getting that other feedback really helps guide them. And typically it just ends up in an aha moment where they're like, oh, this is it. It could be anywhere within the process, but there's typically actually always an aha moment where everything kind of just gels and makes sense. And then it kind of flows from there.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I watched that in our group happening. And there were a couple of people where I was like, wow, definitely, want to work with them at some point, because they just had the coolest ideas or offers, or experts, sort of positioned them as an expert. So talking of expert, actually, so you write for Entrepreneur Magazine. You're a professor at a university or at a college.
Yep, Kendall College of Art and Design. Yep.
Which that's perfect. Match with you, obviously. I mean, how important are I mean, we can all go out and create videos and content and beautiful websites and our branding to say who we are and what our expertise is. But how important is it to have these other credentials, I would say, to sort of solidify your brand? And how strategic should one be, or are you to get those? I mean, how do you approach that?
That's such a great question. I think you really can, in all honesty, get along fine without it if you do have a strong brand and messaging and you give results. I mean, that's the main thing I think it comes down to, because then clients will, recommend you to others. You won't have bad reviews, all of those things, because there are people online saying, they took, one video course from somebody else and now they're a video expert, or, they did their sister's brand and now they're a branding expert. So you do have to be careful in your, I think, and people who are more researchers, like personality types, are going to do their research. And so the credibility markers cannot hurt. So it just so happens that I was, I had the corporate experience and I had the, professor before I became an online entrepreneur, but I did seek out, being featured in Forbes and being an entrepreneur. And that does help and up level your brand and your credibility by having, those logos on your website and just kind of solidifies your authority.
Yeah.
So you can absolutely have an amazing brand and business without that. I just think it takes it to the next level.
Yeah.
Where people are like, wow, like that person truly is like a thought leader, basically.
Mm-hmm. I also think, and I might get poo-pooed on this. A lot of entrepreneurs in my world, they write a book.
Hmm.
That's sort of the thing, a published
Mhm.
author. And then you can hire an expert that makes sure that book for, hot second ends up on the bestseller list on Amazon and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
How do you see the books as an add-on to your branding?
Yeah, it really depends. I feel like it is, like you're saying, it's kind of like a trend right now. And so
Mhm.
if you truly are like a writer and an author and it feels good to you and that's the way you want to serve the world and leave a legacy. I mean, a book could definitely leave a legacy because it's going to be around. Then absolutely, I don't see an issue with it. But I think now it's like the thing that everybody thinks they need to do.
Yeah.
And then we get a lot of books that are, I'm just being completely transparent here. This isn't, and there's amazing books too. So I'm not saying this is for everybody, but sometimes to create a book just for the sake of creating a book and saying you're on the bestseller list, like those books are just filled with kind of fluff and they're repetitive and they're not even amazing books. It's like just to put it out there.
Yeah.
And so I think in that way it can hurt your brand, because I've actually had some books and I was like, oh, this, I get a couple chapters and I'm like, I don't even really want to read this. And that can actually harm your brand. So I think it could go both ways, but you have to, if you're going to do it really well.
Yeah. And not just a sloppy, get it done affair. Yeah. And I mean, I've had a few books like that in my possession where I never made it past the introduction.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I come across the fifth typo, I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm out.
Oof. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm dyslexic. So if I'm seeing 5 typos, there were probably 10.
Yes. Or if it's just not captivating or, like I'd rather have the book be this tiny. Like one of my favorite books is like literally 40 pages.
I love that book.
USquared. Yes.
Yes.
It's so packed full and it's so impactful. So I've actually said that myself, because I feel like someday I'd like to write a book, but I'm like, it's going to be this like short, impactful book, because so I think there's just too much fluff in a lot of books, and I'm like, this is not captivating at all. I don't have time for this, basically.
There's this woman, Kelly, I'm talking to possibly do my cohort, and she did a great video. She did my challenge a couple of weeks ago, and she did this great video talking about, the pill pockets, where you put the pill in to get your dog or cat to eat the pill.
Yes.
Which of course doesn't work with my dog, but that's a whole other story. And she said, like, your book is the essence of your book is the pill, and the peanut butter or the pill pocket or whatever you put around it is sort of the dressing, and you just have to make sure that your balance between the pill and the pill pocket is something that's digestible, basically.
Right.
So I just sort of like, I like the analogy, and the USquared book, by the way, I gave it to Brendan Robin, who worked with me, and I just love that you were reading out of it at the beginning of every class when we did the cohort.
Mm-hmm. I still do. Yeah, I still do. Sometimes I wonder, I'm like, oh, is this the professor and me coming out because I'm like reading to the class? But
that's who you are,
Yeah, it really leads to, I think it helps facilitate the transformation to like be in that mindset of making a quantum leap in your life, in your business. And so I like to plant that seed in the back of everybody's minds, because it really works wonders, I believe. So
yeah, no, I mean, I like the first analogy of the fly trying to get through the window when the window's open, just like, a couple of inches over. And then for me, what I really took home was, the quantum leap. You don't have to go, linear. You it can just be boom, and then you're there. So I thought that was really, really lovely. And you know what it also is? I think we all come in from really busy lives
Mm,
into these cohorts. And I see that with my cohort people. Now, my cohort is fairly early in the morning, especially since I have two West Coast people in it. Um, but I loved the reading because it kind of forced you to just, center yourself, take a deep breath, and be with everybody. So
that's a
I
good
thought it was
point.
really a brilliant move. And I've been, sort of debating what I could do that is similar, but I haven't come up with anything yet. That would be, authentically me and not copying somebody else.
Hmm.
And this is, so to get back to the legacy brand, what I think really is important too, and you had said it just earlier, is it's just a legacy that you're coming from. I think, especially as small business owners, it's also the legacy that we want to create going leave going forward and then leaving behind. So I remember when you and I worked together, it all of a sudden was also that really strong wish, which I haven't finished yet, of having my own website, right? Of creating something that would
Hmm.
also be, because here I'm creating a legacy brand, which is very much attached. Although I have it's not Nina Froriep video marketing. I mean, not with my name anyway, with my last
Yeah.
name, but leave something other than clockwise behind. And also sort of prepare for whatever retirement, if that ever even happens, would look like. So,
Yeah, and
uh,
I think so many people, like you said, are caught up in the day to day and busy, and they're not necessarily thinking that far forward. And I feel like the last 2 years or so, just with everything happening in the world, it's really even more so, I think, caused a lot of more reflection for people to think
mhm.
about, what is the long term future going to look like? And we can't predict it, obviously, but
Yeah.
kind of having that window and having that in place and knowing where you're heading is really important.
Yeah, I think so too. And kind of, I mean, for me, it might have also been that, when we worked together, I was sort of at the 10-year mark before, the classic retirement age. And I think that got me thinking about, 10 years is still a long time, but it also, at the pace we're going, and it only speeds up the older you get, it's going to be, it's going to be in front of my door before I know it. And I want to, I once heard an expert on aging or whatever say that most people spend, like 90% of people spend more time planning their next vacation than
Mm,
they do planning their retirement.
right. I've heard that too. It makes sense, especially if it's like Disney World or something like, well, right, are we going on next,
Yeah,
instead of
yeah, yeah.
in
There's just
retirement now. I mean, people can live long lives. So there's a lot to be had there.
yeah, and I mean, I have quite a few people in my ecosystem that are retired and are now starting their consulting business.
Hmm.
You
Right.
know, so not unusual, not unusual.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I wanted to sort of just touch on how your opinion, or how you see how video and branding, video and legacy, video and
Mm.
sort of the overall look, feel, and taste of your legacy brand, how you see that being used well, or how you use it yourself. So two questions really.
Yeah. So I think video is so important. I mean, it just becomes more and more important. I think that's in the digital age, that's really where we're moving. You see, I mean, I'm not on like TikTok and all of those apps as much, but it is really heading in that direction, just as far as like whether you're on Instagram, whether you're on, like here we are live on LinkedIn, and that's
Yeah.
LinkedIn never had video. So everything really YouTube, and YouTube, of course, is really important because it's a search engine for
Right.
your brand. So I feel like it's just going to keep continuing to be the future.
Hmm.
Although I also helped founded virtual reality labs, so that's a whole different story that we don't need to get into, but that will be coming eventually too. But there's can be video inside virtual reality, so then we're going to have to think about 3D instead of 2D. Like I could go really off the deep end here, but
Well, and then there's AR too, which I actually really am hot on AR. So augmented reality rather than virtual reality, which,
mhm.
total overlap
Can
there. But still,
overlap.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that's really cool too, because you could have videos where people can like step in and like, hey, like, oh, I want to see what this fountain is behind Tiffany and like click on it, So
Mhm.
there's a lot more coming, but for right now, as a thought leader, as a creator of a legacy brand, it's very important because, like we said earlier, like you are the brand.
Mhm.
For people to get to know, like, and trust you, video is just the key, because you can have pretty pictures, you can have good content, but when people hear you speak, they really get a sense of who you truly are, what your thought processes are, what it would be like to work with you, all of those things. And
Mhm.
so I feel like that's, and like if you look at I've gotten more and more into Instagram, and there as well, not only on LinkedIn, but it's so, like, people post pretty pictures and it's like, okay, but when you see somebody talking, and
Mhm.
it's just so much more engaging, because you're actually watching them and learning from them, and you're
Mhm.
like, if you can get a lot of knowledge and information from them, then it's like, oh, if I'm learning this much just from their content and listening to them here, then how much more am I going to get if I actually work with them? So I
Yeah.
think it's extremely important. And I've been talking a lot about like blue ocean strategy now too, of like how to, because the market space for everybody is so crowded right now, especially, I think they said 4 million people left the workforce last year.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're all sitting on the interweb. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so to capture people's attention and to stand out in the marketplace, really
Mhm.
creating like your own lane, like setting yourself apart
Mhm.
is really, really key at this moment specifically.
So you just used the word blue ocean. Explain
Mhm.
that to our audience a little more.
Yes. So some of you may have heard that, some of you may not, and I'm so bad because I cannot remember the author's name. There's two authors that it's a book, so
Okay.
just Google it. But
Yeah.
um, it's really, so this is not my, I wish it was my concept, but it isn't. Basically, the analogy that they've created is like blue ocean is creating your own, I like to say lane, but it's creating your own stratosphere in the internet. So like if you look at brand experts, for instance, there's a ton of different brand experts. What sets me apart is the legacy piece. Like I have this legacy brand method, I have my own unique framework, I do things in a very different way. And so rather, the opposite of blue ocean is red ocean, which it's a red ocean because you're competing for you're competing in an existing very busy marketplace, and it makes the water bloody, which is kind of gross. It's like a weird analogy, but
Must be,
that's,
it must be two guys who wrote the book.
I think one is actually female, but yeah, I wouldn't
Surprised you with
necessarily
that
like say it that
analogy.
way,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah.
literally is like, it makes the bloody ocean, but you're
Yeah.
competing in this marketplace, and it's
Yeah.
competition, and it's
Mm.
you're fighting and you're grasping, and a lot of times the lowest price is the lowest common
Yeah.
denominator, because that's what people are looking for. Where in the
Yeah.
blue ocean, you're really creating this beautiful space for yourself. You have, the competition is irrelevant. You also can charge higher fees because people want your expertise.
Yeah.
And so I think having that strategy, which I like weave into legacy branding more and more now, but also using video to talk about the things that makes you different, and really set yourself apart is really key, because again, you can just put a pretty picture and some posts, but for people to hear you talking about like what sets you apart, what makes you different, like your video process that you teach, I know is completely different than
Yeah.
anybody else out there.
Yeah.
So that's really what will help people be like, oh, I want to work with Nina. I don't want to just learn how to set up my video camera, like I want
Yeah.
to learn all of the pieces.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So Bryn, who is diligently listening to us in the background, just posted that the Blue Ocean Strategy is by Chan Kim and Renee Moborg. Moborn. I don't
Yes, thank you,
know.
Bryn.
Yeah. So great. Yeah. Thanks so much. Sounds really. I mean, some sounds interesting to pursue. And I think so. That brings me back to your cohort, and I know you also. That's not the only thing you offer. So
Mhm.
um, if I was to come to you and say, okay, so we've done the legacy rebrand. Thanks to you, I have a beautiful style guide and a which was the most phenomenal thing to ever have. Having a style sheet was awesome. I never had one before. I felt very grown up.
And
But
isn't it nice because you can just say, here you go to somebody else and
I
have them.
know, and you meet your vendors are like, ooh, that's a legit business I'm working with. So no, really, really love my style sheet, and we still use it to this day. What is it now? 2 years, 2.5 years later.
Yeah.
And what I really loved is getting a brand guide because I've never, ever, ever, ever had that, and I know your specific brand guide is sort of part of your secret sauce. So
Hmm.
really, I mean, that we have updated, but I'm actually actively working with that document
Love it.
because it's so valuable to us, right? And it's so great to just go through it to remind myself, because I tend to have a million ideas every hot second, so I have to sort of make sure that I don't go too crazy. So, and for everybody else, it's nice to have because they sort of see where I'm coming from or where I want to go.
Right.
Um, so so let's say yes. So now I'm like, okay, I got the foundation, and now where do I take it from here? So do you how do you work with people going from sort of that, like, now we have all the ducks in a row, so now let's start swimming. So how do you
Yeah. So the Legacy Brand Foundations is what you had gone through. And that is, like we said, getting all of the things under the iceberg. So like, what is the
Mhm,
messaging? What are the offers? What are the naming conventions? Like, how does it all tie together?
mhm.
How are you going to be positioned? All of those things. Then it moves up to legacy brand transformation, and so that's the visual. So when you went through it, we kind of did that all together. I found over the last 2 years, people kind of felt like, "Whoo, there's like that was just a lot for people to take on with everything going on in the world." So there's the foundations, then there's transformation, which is then like that beautiful icing on the cake, logos, um, colors, the brand guide, the website, which is a one-on-one process. And then after that, I have what's called Legacy Brand Elevation, which is a mastermind setting where we meet biweekly, and we have a guest expert as well every third week, and really work at implementing, launching the brand, creating a marketing strategy, holding people accountable,
Yep.
and continuing that learning and really elevating the brand once it's in place. So those are the main three
Yep.
offers. And then I do work I take usually one or two one-on-one clients a month as well. Just
Mm.
some people prefer that, but the group is really where it's at, I believe.
I couldn't agree more with you. And I mean, when I was thinking of group and couldn't figure it out, and then when I did your cohort, it was for me also like I felt like I was doing two things. Like I was experiencing my first cohort, and at the same time, I knew immediately that that was something I wanted for my business too.
I've
Um,
had so many people go through it and be like, "Ooh, I'm going to use this." Because it's like one of those things I just made up because I knew I didn't want it to be a course where people were left on their own,
yeah, yeah,
but I
exactly.
didn't have capacity to serve everybody one-on-one. So it was like this interesting
Yeah, I mean, I always knew I
dynamic.
wanted to do group, but what I loved about yours specifically was that it was group and one-on-one mixed,
Mhm.
and that to me worked. I thought that was brilliant, and I've done different iterations of it, but now I am at a truly, like, our signature program now is a total hybrid between online assets and learning, group and one-on-one calls with me.
Love it.
And the beauty of it is then, there's specific things that I just feel more comfortable doing one-on-one with you, because then it's like we can do it in an hour, what would take in a group like, 10 hours, and everybody going like, yeah, but my situation, so it's just
Yeah.
much easier to go in and do it one-on-one with people.
Laser focused.
Yeah, laser focused. And then there's the learning. I found it really helpful to put all the learning online, because these are all like little not even 5 minute modules. And the beauty is that if it is online, and it is sort of the more technical aspects of what we do with people, when they forget, they can go back and review.
Right. And they can do it on their own time.
And they can do it, yeah. So like right now I have, for instance, a woman who's way ahead of her schedule in the cohort, because she just has already quite a lot of facility with video. So for her, it's more about, making them look better, and wrapping her brain around the content and the consistency part of it. And then other people are sort of totally clear on their content, but they're still struggling with sort of the shooting and editing part, to get more comfortable with that. So the beauty of that is that the one can go for can race through the program as fast as she wants, and the others can sort of focus on the chapters that they need to focus on. So
yeah, that's amazing.
So a LinkedIn user says, and this is actually a really interesting comment, and I can't see who it is. Ironic, isn't it, that we have to practice and care for authenticity?
Yeah,
that's a really lovely comment, because I mean, we're so far removed sometimes from, I mean, especially looking at, I think with advertising and everything else that's being put out there, with like, everything has to be perfect. I think it sometimes isn't easy. I mean, I know I didn't love it when I was 50 and all of a sudden ended up in front of the camera. After safely tucked behind the camera for 30 years of my career. And I mean, and even now, I'm not getting younger, I'm not getting skinnier, I'm not getting prettier. And, so what? That's not what people hire me for. I hope so.
Exactly. I just wrote a post about that yesterday on Instagram. I think on Instagram and Facebook, is like, why, it's hard for people to wrap their heads around that, because we've been inundated with that. And I used to work in those I worked in some of those companies, and that's part of the reason I wanted to leave too, because it just feels so fake. And one of my favorite things to say is you can't see the label when you're inside the bottle. And so sometimes it's hard to have an objective view of who am I really, like, how do I show up authentically, especially like I'm a mother, like no matter, like you're a dual citizen, you're like, there's so many things that make us multidimensional beings. And then it's almost like, wait a second, like, who am I really? And so that's like a lot of the process that I love to take people through, as far as like in your business, who are you? And so you can show up and be comfortable and authentic. And I work with mostly women. And so there's so much pressure on us in that way. So, but then there's also a balance. So then there's some entrepreneurs that will go on and just be super vulnerable and almost overshare to the point of like, I don't know if I would trust that person with my business. And I hate to say that, but it's true. Like, there's almost this opposite, because like Brene Brown's books are amazing on vulnerability. And I do believe we need to be vulnerable. But I also think there's a balance where you still need to be professional. So like I think that's the interesting thing of like, what's that sweet spot, right? So
and I think it's different for everybody, right?
Absolutely.
I'm working with a coach right now, Shannon Hernandez. I mean, she's super out there on Facebook, very, very, very personal stuff. And that works for her, right?
Right.
If I would do that, it would be beyond awkward. Now, also, I don't live on Facebook. I live on LinkedIn, and what is expected or done on LinkedIn is very different. But it also, I find my clients happen to be there, but it also suits my personality, right?
Right.
And so I don't think that is a coincidence. And I always say, and I think I actually learned that from Ron Reich, who I met through your course, who said, choose 5 things that you share with people. and then share those, right? So and I've had this discussion with several clients who didn't want to even have an online presence, like way back when. And it's
Yeah.
like, if you don't have a presence, then there's a void, and the void will always fill itself. And if you don't have the presence, the void will fill itself with shit that you can't control.
Right.
But if you put
So
stuff out
true.
there, then you control the message.
Mm-hmm.
And if I have, when people feel really uncomfortable with sharing personal stuff, I'm like, okay, let's pick three things you feel comfortable about sharing, right? And and I always like, people know that I'm, dual citizen. They know that I spend my time between Switzerland and New York. They know I have a dog. They know I do artwork. So there's a couple of things that I just share regularly, and other stuff slips in too. But it does, after a while, create sort of that persona. And I think it is important, to the point that LinkedIn user unknown made, is that we maybe check in every once in a while, say, is this still really me? Is this still really authentic? Or have I just put myself into an avatar of my own, right? And
Right. Yeah.
become
I
stale.
have a really good example is a client of mine. She is Filipino, like first generation American, and decided and kind of branded herself like the boss babe, like pink, like she's in California, all of those things. And there's nothing wrong with that, but she was following the trends, and then when we worked together, her name is Elaine Liu.
Mm.
Um, when we worked
Was in the
together,
same group with me.
yeah, she was in the same
Yeah.
group with you. Now
Yeah.
that I'm thinking about it, so Elaine.
Yeah.
And when we got into the visual piece, she had her aha moment of, this is not me. Like, I've just been following what is trendy and what's happening, because she's quite a bit younger too, and so it's like,
Yeah.
she sees people on Instagrams and that, like, assumes that's what she needs to do.
Yeah,
But it
makes sense.
happens to everybody. And really, we like locked into her heritage, and so her colors are now like a take on the Filipino colors. And she is a coach. She was it was still an amazing career, but she was a career coach, and now she's a career coach for women of all colors, because she wanted to really support, the underserved communities. And it was just really beautiful to see that all come together. And she felt like it was really aligned for her, and she was standing in her power, and her business like took off, because then it made her more comfortable to actually speak about those things and speak from the heart. So
I remember that was her aha moment when you suggested to her, and that was so freaking brilliant. She said she wanted to work with women of color, and you came back and said women of all colors.
mm-hmm.
And that was like her, to my experience, seeing it in the group, at least for me, that seemed to be her one big sort of aha in that group, right? When she was,
and it's so cool to see her community now, because it's like literally a rainbow of women, and it's really fun.
No, and I mean, she was just such a amazing energy about her. So yeah, wonderful. Tiffany, I could go on ever and ever and ever with you.
Same here. I always love chatting with you.
Yes, really loved our discussion, and I now know who LinkedIn user unknown is. It was Janine Kutch, who's also a client of mine. So thank you for that wonderful comment. That really gave us a whole new little topic to explore, which is really, really important. So Tiffany, thank you for taking the time, getting up early. Although you're a mother, you're probably up early anyway.
Yes.
I'm judging from myself upon others. I had hoped that when I got myself a dog, that I would be, become an early riser, which is something I always aspired to and never do. And I got the biggest sleepy head of a dog ever. Like, I have to throw him out of bed when we roll out. So it's like, I'm like, okay, the universe is telling me it's perfectly okay to not be an early
That's your authentic. That's just who you are. It's so true. I am a little bit forced with a child, so
yes.
I love.
But at least that has a time limit for you. At some point, that child will be a teenager and be like, "Mommy, don't wake me at noon. It's way too early."
Exactly. We'll see how that goes.
Exactly. All right. Well, Tiffany, thank you so much for joining us. And if where do people find you? What's the best place for people
Yeah,
to
so I am
go?
here on LinkedIn, and actually, Nina, you are inspiring me to, in the new year, I'm going to kind of ramp up my LinkedIn a little bit. I'm fairly quiet on here because I found my clients used to be more on Facebook, and, Facebook is changing. I do think LinkedIn is kind of
Yeah.
becoming the place to be. And I'm also on Instagram. So I would say connect with me here on LinkedIn. I'm not super active, but that's the plan. And then I am very active on Instagram. So I'm at Tiffany Neuman Creative on Instagram as well. And you can check out my website, which really fun. I'm refreshing. Cobblers, what's the term? The cobbler's kids with no shoes. I
Yeah,
also put up my own website, which it's still a nice website if you go there now, tiffanyNeuman.com. But
it's nice.
I'm redoing it. That'll be launching mid-January, and elevating my own brand. So that's super exciting as well.
Can't wait to see that because I'm sure it's going to be absolutely amazing.
Yes.
So we're going to put the links to all of that into the comments, into the chat, and so everybody can connect with you quickly and easily. And and if people want to work with you, is just the best way to look at your website and then
Yep. Or email me. It's just Tiffany at
Yep.
tiffanyNeuman.com. That is totally fine too.
Okay, great. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Tiffany. And I'm sure we'll have you back before long.
All right. Thank you so much, Nina. Bye,
Thank you, everybody, for listening. Bye-bye.